She doesn't have the capacity for that, said the billionaire, smiling at the maid. But what he didn't know is that she would shock everyone that day. His words, spoken with the casualness of someone brushing a crumb from the sleeve of a linen jacket, echoed in the glass-enclosed meeting room. With all due respect, Lucia is an excellent employee, but she doesn't have the skills for this. I was outside in the hallway with my cleaning cart. My gloved hands held a spray bottle. My job was to be invisible, to erase the marks others left. Coffee stains, fingerprints on the glass, the remnants of lunch. And in that moment, I wished I were more invisible than ever. My name is Lucia. I'm 42 years old, and I'm a cleaner on the 27th floor of Valente Corp, the president's floor, the brains of Ricardo Valente's tech empire. To everyone here, I'm just that. The quiet, efficient woman who leaves the offices spotless before dawn. A shadow that moves silently. That's exactly what I need them to think. The life I lead today was a choice born of pain and necessity. My sole focus is my 10-year-old son, Mateus. His smile is the sunshine that rules my days, and ensuring his health and peace is the only equation I'm determined to solve. We live in a simple apartment miles away from the luxury and power of this building. Our routine is modest and predictable. It's my refuge. But there was a time when my life was made up of complex variables, theoretical universes, and the applause of packed auditoriums, a time when my name was preceded by a title, Dr. Lucia Almeida. One of the youngest mathematicians to publish a thesis on quantum topology, a name that circulated with respect in the halls of IMPA, the Institute of Pure and Applied Mathematics. I lived in a world of elegant logic and abstract truths. I was married to Pedro, a brilliant physicist, and together we were a force of nature. Our passion for numbers was surpassed only by our love for each other and for our little Mateus. Until one night, returning from a conference where I had been the keynote speaker, real-world physics brutally imposed itself. A car out of control, a moment of twisting metal. Pedro was gone, and Mateus in the back seat was left with severe after-effects that required years of expensive and delicate treatment. The academic world, with its pressure to publish, its fierce competition, and its memories of Pedro in every hallway, became a place of terror for me. Mathematics, once my refuge, now seemed complicit in my loss. I sold everything, paid for the best doctors for my son, and sought anonymity. I needed a job that required nothing of my mind, only my hands. A job that would allow me to simply be Mateus's mother. And so Dr. Lucia Almeida died, and the cleaning lady Lucia was born. And for 5 years it worked. The it that billionaire Ricardo Valente thought I lacked was the biggest problem in his company's history. A billion-dollar project called Kronos. An orbital logistics system using a fleet of satellites to optimize global transportation routes in real time. The promise was to revolutionize global trade. The problem, the core algorithm, the lifeblood of the project, had a flaw, a phantom bug that no one could find. It generated perfect routes in simulations, but in practical tests after a few hours it collapsed, creating exponential chaos. Millions of dollars were burned every day in failed tests. Valente's team, made up of geniuses recruited from MIT and Stanford, had been banging their heads against the wall for 6 months, and the wall was the gigantic whiteboard that took up an entire wall of Ricardo Valente's private office. Every night around 11, I entered that room. The sanctuary of the most powerful man in technology in South America, and there he was, a tangle of equations, flowcharts, and codes. At first I looked away. It was a portal to the world I had abandoned, a pain I didn't want to feel. But the math inside me wasn't dead, it was just dormant. And that equation on the board was like a siren to a firefighter. I saw the beauty of the architecture they created, the ambition of the question they were trying to answer. And after a few weeks I began to see the flaw. It wasn't a coding error, a technical detail. It was something deeper, a philosophical error in the premise. They were using a linear optimization metric for a chaotic, non-linear problem. They were trying to measure a cloud with a ruler. With each cycle, the initial small inaccuracy multiplied until the entire system became a paradox. I fought the urge. It's not your problem, Lucia. Clean the floor. Go home. Take care of your son. But the problem haunted me. I dreamed of the variables, the vectors. It was a piece of music with a wrong note, and my brain desperately needed to correct it. Until, one Thursday night, I couldn't resist anymore. The room was silent, lit only by the moonlight streaming through the picture window. They had tried a new approach, and the furious erasures on the board betrayed another day of failure. I approached. My heart pounded. I looked at the door, at the empty hallway. It was madness. A risk that could cost me my job, the peace I'd fought so hard to find. But math demanded entry. I grabbed a black marker from the tray. My hand, which spent the day handling cloths and mops, trembled as I held the familiar tool. In a lower corner of the board, a blank space they had ignored, I wrote a single line. A single, short, partial differential equation. It wasn't the complete solution. It was the key, the seed of a new logic. The suggestion that they should stop looking for the shortest route and start looking for the most stable one, embracing randomness instead of fighting it. I hesitated for a moment. I considered deleting it, but I let it go. Before leaving, I did something I can't explain. Next to the equation, I drew a small stylized L, almost a hieroglyph. It was my initial, but also a symbol that, in mathematics, represents the Laplace operator, the divergence meter. An inside joke that only I would understand. The next day, the atmosphere on the 27th floor was electric. From the snatches of conversation I overheard as I cleaned up the spilled coffee, I knew they'd found the note. My first reaction was irritation. Who had dared vandalize Valente's sacred painting? But a young engineer, a quiet guy named Gabriel, with more curiosity than ego, insisted on testing the vandal suggestion. He inserted the logic of that equation into the simulation. And the Chronos system did not collapse. It ran for 12 hours, 24/48 rock steady. The little equation had fixed the billion-dollar flaw. The question has changed from who vandalized to who is the genius. They were looking for a genius at universities and rival companies. They offered a reward. They analyzed the security cameras, but the angle didn't capture the corner of the board where I wrote. They thought it was industrial espionage, a rival playing a trick on them. Little did they know that the answer was cleaning the coffee stain off their desk. I continued my routine, my heart in my throat. Every night, I watched their progress. They had understood the key and were now building the new architecture around it. The name L became a legend on the floor, a benevolent ghost. But Gabriel, the young engineer, began to observe me. He didn't look at me with the indifference of the others. There was curiosity in his gaze. He noticed that when cleaning Valente's room, my eyes always lingered on the painting for a second too long. The billionaire offered a fortune, but I didn't want money. I wanted silence. One night, Gabriel set a trap. He stayed late, alone. On a smaller board in an adjacent conference room, he wrote a classic math problem, a game theory paradox known for having a counterintuitive and elegant solution. He knew only someone with a very specific background would recognize it. When I walked in to clean the room, I saw the problem. I smiled. It was an old acquaintance from my college days. I resisted for a minute, but it was stronger than me. I took the marker and underneath his problem drew a simple diagram and the answer. No signature this time. The next morning he waited for me near the service elevators. "Good morning, Lucia," he said, his voice low and respectful. "Good morning, Mr. Gabriel." He held up a sheet of paper with the problem and my solution. "It was you, wasn't it?" "La for Lucia." My blood ran cold. I shook my head, but my eyes must have betrayed me. "Please," he insisted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I won't tell anyone. I just need to know. The elegance of the solution isn't that of an engineer. It's that of an artist. It's that of a pure mathematician." That phrase, pure mathematician. No one had called me that in years. I felt a tear form in the corner of my eye. I just nodded, just once. The relief and admiration on his face were genuine. He promised to keep my secret, but the secret was too big. Gabriel, pressured by Valente, who was obsessed with finding L, ended up confessing his suspicions. And that brings us back to the beginning, to the glass-enclosed conference room. Brave, incredulous, and almost offended by Gabriel's theory, he decided to resolve the matter with a public display of humiliation. He called me in. I walked in wearing my blue uniform, pushing my cart. The room was full, the entire Kronos project board, the best engineers in the country. Everyone looked at me with a mixture of pity and curiosity. "Lucia," Valente said, his tone falsely paternal. "Young Gabriel here has the illusion that you understand these matters." He pointed to the board, now covered with the new architecture based on my equation. "Please clarify for all of us that this is a mistake so we can get back to work." And then came the sentence that would change everything. "With all due respect, Lucia is an excellent employee, but she doesn't have the skills for this." A heavy silence fell over the room. All eyes were on me. I could feel the veiled contempt, the prejudice. They didn't see a woman. They saw a uniform, a social function. I looked at the painting. I looked at Ricardo Valente's arrogant face. I looked at Gabriel's pleading gaze, and I thought of my son. I thought of the years of invisibility, the weight of my grief, and I decided enough was enough. I left my cart in the corner. I walked slowly to the whiteboard. My gloveless hands picked up a red marker. The room held its breath. I didn't say a word. I just started writing. I didn't defend my little equation. I went further. With quick, precise movements, I circled 3 key areas in their architecture. Areas where they had superficially interpreted my suggestion, creating new bottlenecks. Under each circle, I wrote the corrections. I deleted an entire section of their code, which had become redundant, and replaced it with a stochastic optimization model that was infinitely more efficient. My hand moved with the memory of thousands of hours in front of a chalkboard. Math flowed from me like a native language. In less than 10 minutes, I not only explained what I had done, but also dismantled and reconstructed their 6 months' work before their eyes. I finished. I placed the marker back in the tray with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the silence of the room. I turned to face them. Their jaws were dropped. The engineers stared at me from the board, as if they'd seen an apparition. Gabriel had a smile that stretched from ear to ear. And Ricardo Valente. The billionaire seemed to have aged 10 years. The arrogance on his face had melted away, giving way to an expression of shock so profound it bordered on comical. "My name," I said, my voice clear and firm, breaking the silence, "is Lucia Almeida. I have a PhD in theoretical mathematics from IMPA, and with all due respect, Mr. Valente, your team has a limited capacity to understand the nature of dynamic instability. If you'll excuse me, I have a coffee stain to clean in the hallway." The resolution was swift. Valente asked me to stay. He dismissed the stunned team. Alone with me in his office, he was a different man, humiliated, curious, and like a good businessman, sniffing out the biggest opportunity of his life. He apologized, a sincere apology, and then he offered me the world. A director's position, a 7-figure salary, a research lab all to myself. I refused. I told him my story, the loss, my son, my need for peace. He listened for the first time, not as a boss listens to an employee, but as a man listens to another human being. We negotiated, not an employment contract, but a consulting agreement. I would work from home, on my own schedule. I would address the problems no one else could solve. In return, he would give me a salary that would ensure Mateus had the best medical care and the best education for the rest of his life. And above all, he would give me what I valued most, discretion. To the world I would remain non-existent. To him I would be his secret weapon. Today, a few months later, I write this story from the porch of my new home, a house with a garden, where Mateus, strong and healthy, chases a ball. On my laptop screen is the new challenge Valente sent me, a quantum cryptography problem that is hindering the launch of his new digital bank. I look at the equations, and for the first time in years, I smile. Math is my friend again. I found a way to be doctor. Lucia without ceasing to be Mateus's mother. I didn't have to choose between genius and peace. I didn't just solve the billionaire's algorithm. I finally solved the equation of my own life, finding the perfect balance between all my variables. And that's a solution of such elegance that no whiteboard in the world could contain. Did you enjoy this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below and tell us which city you're listening from. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel so we can build a community that shares inspiring stories together. Thank you so much for watching.